Hi, Michelle. How are you doing today?
I'm doing well, and yourself?
I'm great. Thank you. Thank you for meeting with me.
You're welcome.
As you know, the last time we spoke, we had decided that we weren't real sure on what area of focus you wanted your coaching to be in. So we arranged for me to observe you, and I did that yesterday. I made some notes. I'd like to go over those with you, and then you also observed me teaching a class, and hopefully you took some notes, and we can talk about that. The ultimate goal of today's conference is to determine what area you would like to focus this coaching cycle on, and then how we're going to do so.
Okay.
Do you have any questions before we continue?
No.
All right. Well, my first question for you, when I observed you, you guys were doing the Seasons Lab,
Yes.
and that was in your second period honors class
Yes.
on November 9th. And I'd just like to know, how do you think it went?
um, it went pretty normally for a class. Like nothing different happened that day. I think it was maybe a little bit disorganized at times at the beginning. I was a bit thrown off because normally I wait for announcements. And so I have kind of that pause in the beginning of class for announcements, and that didn't happen. So I wasn't sure, should I start? Should I, that type of thing. But other than that, I think it went okay. That was a pretty good class. So.
I know what you mean. Normally we start off second period with some announcements, and for whatever reason that didn't happen. The librarian didn't make it down to do the announcements. So that's one of the joys of teaching, is having to be a little bit flexible
Right.
when things are out of our control. And to me, you didn't come off disorganized at all. You handled it like a pro. So it went really well. So if that's your only negative thing that I think that you're on the right track. What are some highlights of the lesson that you gave yesterday?
Um, I think things went really well at the lab stations when the kids were working. They seemed to be really working at the task at hand. Normally, with a big class like that, I always kind of have trouble with managing the kids when on in just it being at the lab station, because every lab station is full. I've got four people in each lab station, and even a seventh one that's on a mobile lab desk that I have. So I've got a lot of things going on at the same time, and in my head, I feel a little bit like, I would like a little bit more control with the kids, and I haven't quite. I feel like I haven't quite established that. There's, a lot of side talking, but for this interactive lesson, I feel like the kids were a little bit more zoned in on what they were doing. And I think maybe it had to do with the manipulatives they were using. They're using a flashlight and, the little styrofoam globe. So I think they were a bit more into it. And then it seemed to be going well. They seemed to know the topic that we, spent 2 days before on. So I was pleased about that.
So let me just kind of get an idea. Was that an introduction to the topic, or was that kind of a wrap up, final conclusion?
It was kind of a wrap up. Now,
Okay.
normally, and so here's kind of it. That was a unique situation as well, because for the rest, since the start of the year, we would do something like what we did on the 9th first as an introductory unit.
Mm-hmm.
But this time, I had the kids do notes on it first, and then a worksheet over the notes, and then this lab. So I kind of switched the order around,
Mm-hmm.
and I feel like they were more um, that they grasped it better at the lab stations, and were connecting things better.
So what you're describing to me is reflective teaching. You were doing it and trying it one way. It hasn't gone very well. So you flipped it and reversed it, and you're trying it a different way. And you would say overall the outcome is positive?
I think so. Yes. Now I haven't graded the papers yet, but it seemed like they were doing well.
I only observed one class, and it was an honors class. How did the rest of your classes, how did your regular classes go with that new um, order that you're talking about?
I feel like it went really well. I feel like the kids really knew what was going on at the lab station. They were correcting each other's mistakes, and they knew what to do. I think when they go in, when I had it at the beginning, and they go in with it with no knowledge of the concept beforehand or very little, I feel like they just think it's too hard, so they don't try as hard as they should, which is to me backwards, But for these
But
kids,
they're adolescents.
yeah, they don't give it their all when we start off with it brand new.
All right, and so when I asked you for some highlights, you said that you felt like they were on task, but you felt like things maybe there was some side talking going on. You felt like things were just a little out of control. Let me first assure you that anytime you do cooperative learning, there's going to be an element of chaos. And in teaching, there's two types of chaos. There's organized chaos and there's disorganized chaos. What I observed yesterday was organized chaos. Um, the side talking was for the most part pertinent to the topic, and the only time you may have had a little bit of off-task behavior, in my opinion, was when some groups were finishing earlier than others, and that's just going to happen. If you can solve that problem, you could solve teachers across the United States problem.
Right.
What do we do when somebody finishes early? Do we punish them by giving them more work?
Right.
So those are some things maybe you can establish beforehand, before you send the kids off into the cooperative learning groups. Give them your expectations when they're done. I expect you to go back to your chair. I don't mind if you quietly talk.
Right.
But let's not get out of hand. Let's just act like normal young adults that we are, or whatever. So, from a different viewpoint, your perception of the class behavior and my perception of the class behavior might be a little different. I feel like you have classroom management down, and you're a fifth year teacher. Is that correct? You're at where you need to be as far as classroom management. Could you tighten up some things? Yes, but me as a 15-year veteran can still tighten up some things. So, in my opinion, I don't feel like, for me, it's a big area of concern. How do you feel about that?
I don't know. I guess because I don't see other classrooms all the time. I only know what happens in my classroom, and I just it's I have big classes, and so that's intimidating. So when it's talking from 27 students or 28 students, it seems like a lot. So I don't know. I guess if to me, in my perspective, it feels like I could have a little bit more of a handle on things than I already do. I guess just because, um, like I said, I don't know other classrooms and how the kids act in other classrooms and whether. So I can't compare that I have a good classroom management and to somebody who doesn't. I do know that my kids aren't going crazy. They're not, and they do talk. And yes, it might take me a little bit to calm them down, but I try to do the best that I can, and I usually do. But it just seems like I have to do that more often. So I guess that's why I feel like the management is kind of off.
Well, let me ask you this question, because you went and observed me the period right after teaching my class. Just in the perspective of classroom management and on-task behavior, misbehavior, whatever, what did you notice from my class? Was it similar? Was it different? And if so, how?
Well, I did notice some similarities, which kind of made me feel a little bit better about my
That's
class.
my point.
So, initially these are my thoughts, but now seeing other teachers, then I can see, okay, so things are not so bad. What I did notice the difference in the class is that, and I don't know if it's just special to that class, but I noticed that most of your kids didn't really do a whole lot of group to group talking. And I have a big problem with my student that's sitting at this lab table easily talking to a student sitting at the lab table next to them, and that's where the side talking is, and because it's a lot of cross group banter that's happening, that I don't know how else to get a handle on that other than what I've already said, So I think maybe if I had to say what my biggest problem was, it'd be that.
Okay, so group to group talking.
Right.
It is something that I, as a teacher, deal with as well. So you're not alone in that When that does occur, what is your initial response to those kids that are group to group talking?
Well, I try to redirect them as soon as it's happening. I do at the beginning of the school year. I kind of drilled it in their head that there is no wandering in the class, so you stay at your group. So the wandering from group to group, that's not a problem. It's just the talking from group to group. So it's a constant redirection, and then when it's constant with one period, then I've gotten to the point where I've had to pull a student and take them to take she or he to their desk and have them do individual work.
So there are consequences.
There are consequences, yes.
Do those consequences you feel alleviate the misbehavior in the future, or just at the moment?
Um, I guess just at the moment, because if it alleviated future ones, then it wouldn't be a concern for me now.
I would love to share with you my observations, but before we do that, I'd like you to maybe go over what you observed in my class, and I'll talk about that.
Okay. I really like your idea of timing the warm up because I know I don't do that. And so I feel that in some classes our warm up takes a little bit longer than it should, or it's more they have I don't know, they're not really taking it seriously because they have time to do it, and then it's time to go up to the board. So I really like that you time your warm ups. I did like that, and then this one just so happened to be where you guys went over that topic for a couple of days, and a lot of the groups didn't get it correct. But I like that you not only talked about what they did wrong, but group dynamics, so you were talking to them as to why they're still getting it wrong. And it's not just because they're not understanding it, because sometimes they understand it. It's just they're arguing half the time with their group about, the correct answers.
Right,
so
right.
Maybe I don't talk about that more. With my kids, it's just a focus on a person when really, it's how they work together as a group. I do notice that, and it's something that I don't do often, and whenever I see it being done, then it triggers my, in my head, I talk with my hands a lot, and things make sense in my head, but I need to remember I already know this stuff. So a lot of kids are not audio learners, they could be visual learners. So going to the smartboard, I notice you go to your smartboard all the time and you pick up your marker and you mark it as you go. I have a tendency to mark it first period and leave it up there, for second period, third period, and fourth period. So they're reading it. And some kids get lost on just reading the words up there. But if I'm actually saying it and writing it and they're reading it as I'm writing it, could make a difference. And I noticed that you do that, which I really liked a lot because I don't think about things like that as often as I should. Those are some things. Going group to group and making sure that the way things are at the lab station, because sometimes I go to a lab station and I don't realize it, but I just see that one kid's doing it, so they have their paper here and they're asking me for help with the group instructions, and one person has it and they're asking me and the three others are there and I'm just telling them to listen, where I noticed what you did is put it here so that way everybody can see it and let everybody read it. I think sometimes I don't put the group instructions as a focus. So let's make sure that everybody sees the group, the instructions on what to do. And then so yeah, and I think the questions that I had were was that the how you get your students to stay in the group, because I just noticed that there wasn't a whole lot of cross talking with the groups. That was my biggest one. And then the what can be the filler time while waiting for the teacher's initials, because sometimes in some of our lab activities they're just sitting there while it's just me trying to go group to group. And your kids seem to be pretty behaved while they were at the lab stations for the most part. Let me see. While the kids were at the lab stations, I noticed that you went through the moon phases because you were doing moon phases, and
Right.
so that's what
Right.
I'm doing next. And you made sure that everybody understood. You drew everybody's attention in so they could focus on what they were doing wrong.
Talking about to the whole class or just to that group?
To that group.
Okay.
But it was done in a group to group level.
Okay. Well, let me go ahead and I'll answer your questions. As far as the group to group talking, as you know, classroom management starts day one, minute one
Right,
of the first day of school. So that has been ingrained now. We've been in school for 6 weeks. So was it like that at the beginning? Absolutely not. How did it get to there now? A lot of training, a lot of reminders. Although they're 13 and 14 years old, and they're going through physical changes that make them look like an adult, cognitively they're still children.
Mm-hmm.
And so we have to remember that they need the constant reminders. So before they head out, and I noticed that you did this as well, before they head out into their cooperative groups, I put a special emphasis on what I expect their behavior to be. So many times in a row that I get tired of saying it, but it's gotten to the point now where I don't have to say it as much. And I'm not sure if I said it when you were observing or not. But according to your observation, it still happened. It's like drill that into them. That also goes along with, while they're waiting to get checked by the teacher on their portion of the assignment, what are they doing to fill their time? And that's probably when your group to group talking is going. Again, getting that classroom management from the very beginning and reminders going will help that process. I have it a little bit easier. My classes are smaller because I teach inclusion. I also have a paraprofessional in the room, so we can split up the room half and half. When I did not, and I was teaching, all by myself in the classroom, was it a concern? Yes, but it's just constant reminders, and then having those, unfortunately, consequences for when they're not.
Right.
Did that answer your question?
Mm-hmm.
Your question? Anything else before I share my
Yes,
thoughts
actually.
with you? Okay.
So you started a brand new unit and
Right.
with moon phases. So
Right.
they had, you had talked about moon phases beforehand and all that. What I really like that you did, and which I recognize that I don't do enough is the what do they already know about moon phases?
Activating their prior knowledge.
Right, exactly. And that is what I have trouble remembering to do when teaching a new unit. Because sometimes not sometimes, most of the times I go into a new unit not really asking them what they already know. I just go straight into teaching. And um, I just, I really like that. And I need to remember to incorporate that into my lessons because I think it helped tons when the kids went to their lab stations. Like, oh wait, I do know this stuff. This is not hard. I know half of it.
Right.
And I really, really, really like that.
Well, thank you. And I'm making a few notes because as we're having this conversation, my light bulbs are going off. Because remember, we're in this process together. I'm learning, and even if I wasn't a graduate student, I'd still be learning as I go because every content is different, every classroom is different, every teacher has different ways of doing things, and so it's not my job to give you a cookie cutter, this is the way it goes, because what works for me might not work for you.
Right.
So as you are going through your areas of concern and your areas of observation, you're giving me two basic categories, and I'm not sure if you realize it. You're giving me the management concerns, which you're probably very aware of, how to work as a group, the group-to-group talking, the filling time while they're waiting on the teacher to check their answer, or as I mentioned, when groups finish earlier. Those are all management concerns. But another one that you might not realize is you're bringing up questioning. adapting to your visual learners, writing on the board, asking questions, getting the whole group to focus when you're trying to explain something. So all that is instructional delivery and questioning. So I want, as I'm going through my things and my observations, by the end of this conversation, we need to have an avenue that you want to go down, and I'm up for either way. If you want to go down the management avenue, we'll do that. If you want to go down the content delivery, questioning kind of avenue, we can do that as well. For my own notes, I put smiley faces next to the things that I saw, and you're going to see there's way more positives in my opinion. So to go over the positive, I really liked at the warm-up how you picked a student who did not get the question correct, and you had them answer. Because it's very easy to pick the hand raisers and the kids that know all the answers. But this young lady got it wrong, and you talked it out with her, and I thought that was really positive. I liked your quote where you said, "This is a disservice to your classmates if you're answering. If you know all the answers and you're answering for them, you're doing them a disservice because they need to learn it as well." And I love that quote. I wrote it word for word, and I want to use it. You modeled the seasons before they went to their cooperative groups. So you did a little bit of like reminding them what they've learned, activating their prior knowledge. You did the modeling the seasons, the tilt. You talked about direct and indirect sunlight, how the opposite hemispheres have opposite seasons. And then when the earth is not tilted towards or away, you talked about fall and spring. And then you also mentioned the equator and how the tilt doesn't affect that. All of that was great. It got the class focused on what the assignment was going to be and reminded them of your expectations of what they should already know. And especially on a Monday, because we had the weekend to go. So, those reminders are great. During your interactive lesson, another positive, all your materials were set up. Everything was ready to go. Before they had been dismissed to their lab stations, you went over the materials with them and how they were supposed to use them. You reminded them that this was going to be a minor grade. You reminded them that this is information they needed to go on the test. And if they felt like at the end of the lab or the cooperative learning opportunity, if they did not understand, that you were available for tutorials. Let's see. So all of those were wonderful things that you did before the kids even got there. During the activity, the students, it's very evident that you have high expectations for your students. And I wrote that in just earlier. You have high expectations, and that's why you expect the class behavior to be not perfect, but close to it, right? It's very evident you have those high expectations because the kids went to the lab stations, they got to work immediately. And it was every single group, and you had 7 groups, and that's over 27 kids. Mm-hmm. That's to be commended. You reminded them throughout the entire activity, don't forget this, and make sure you read this, and whatever. So I really like that, and you did that more than just once. You moved around, and you checked in with every group. Every single group got to see their teacher, and you were never behind your desk grading papers or catching up on emails. Super positive right there. You were checking for understandings and correcting if they had misconceptions, so that was great. You corrected some off-task behavior in group 3. You had said, I guess you had given them a warning once, and then you had corrected their behavior, and then finally gave them the ultimatum that you're either going to do this or you're going to go and do book work that accomplishes the same thing. You have a visually impaired student in that classroom, yes. I noticed. I loved how apparently he had been absent. Mm-hmm. You helped him out at the very beginning, getting him all situated, but then you checked in with him as he was working with his teacher's aide throughout, and that was important because I think a lot of times, we have those students, and it's intimidating to have. I've had that experience as well. And especially when they have a pair, they're like, oh, they're okay, that person can handle it. Right. You didn't allow that to happen. You still let Peyton know that he was important to you and you wanted to check in and make sure he was understanding the material. And not only is that awesome for me to view, but I guarantee you Peyton appreciated that. You gave them a a reminder when there was 20 minutes left of class. You went from group to group asking questions to make sure they really were understanding and learning. And then you had obviously an organized fashion for them to turn it into the box in the back. So awesome lesson. It was a pleasure to watch you. A few of the things um, that I did want to touch on, and it's funny because what you mentioned was pretty close to what I have written down.
Okay.
I feel like you give way too long on your warm-up. I realized we were maybe waiting for announcements to happen. Um, you had them do some housekeeping things. Apparently, there were assignments from the previous week they needed to turn in. That was great. But I think that the kids have a 5-minute passing period. Some of them get there with 4 minutes left in the passing period, a minute or two after the bell. Second period is obviously going to be a different story, so after the announcements, but it would be immediate.
Right.
We didn't get to see that yesterday because the announcements didn't happen, but I think that we can tighten up that time on the warm-up. Timer, real cheap, H-E-B, Walmart. The other thing that I had...
Teachers and students, please pardon this interruption. Just a reminder, in honor of Veterans Day tomorrow, we will all be wearing red, white, and blue. So don't forget to dress with us. Thank you.
You're a very auditory teacher. You like to talk.
Yeah.
Most students are not auditory. In fact, if you broke down your 3 learning styles, auditory, visual, and tactile kinesthetic, your fewest percentage of your students are auditory. It might have to do with internet and social media and all that. I feel like it's even more so. So I'm glad you picked that up in your observation of me as I go to that whiteboard and I draw it.
Yeah.
And every period I erase it and draw it again. So just be more cognizant of that because you're going to reach more of your students. Another just kind of thing that I had noticed also, you had the kids label 1 season on the earth. Why not label all 4?
Yeah.
Let's step it up. If they've got a lot of time, then let's let them use it. If we expect it of them, they'll rise to that occasion. Is what I've seen. The other area, again, in my notes here, you were going over modeling the seasons before they had gone to their cooperative groups. You had what I'm calling a Q&A, a question and answer session, or a questioning round. You were demonstrating it, and there's something in education called wait time.
Okay.
And wait time is giving everybody the time they need to process what the teacher just said. So you're going to ask your question, you're going to pause, and then asking somebody to answer. And there are strategies that we can incorporate to improve not only your skills with that, but kids as well. So that would be another area. And, I made the note of some groups finished earlier than others. But at the same time, that's a struggle that I still, as a 15-year teacher, what do I do with these kids? I don't want to punish them because they finished earlier. Right. And for the most part, they went back to their desks. I noted that they were talking at an appropriate noise level. I didn't feel like the kids that were finished were out of hand. There were a few kids that put their folders up early. And that's something that I battle as well. And as a teacher, I go back and, gosh, I've got to remember to tell them what to do to finish it up. So overall, fantastic lesson. A few minor tweaks, and it would have been, perfection. So I've given you my thoughts. You've given me yours. We've observed one another. What are your thoughts? What do you think the next step is in this equation of us working together?
Well, I do want to, because I feel like management is just going to come with experience. Then we get another year under my belt, I'll be a little bit of a tighter teacher when it comes to that. And and I feel that I kind of see see the changes that I've made in myself from the first 6 weeks to this 6 weeks, and how the kids are changing, but I think I'm changing a little bit too. That we're getting tighter as a classroom when it comes time to work and not. So I think from listening to your observation of me, and after this conversation, I think the other avenue is where I want to go down, because like I don't know what wait time is, or and I don't know what trying to change how I've been teaching for the last 4 years, because I do talk, talk and talk and talk, and so in my head I see the pictures and everything and it makes sense, but I can tell when I'm talking and I start to lose a drop and drop and drop, and it's not until I, have to go to them.
I need Jose Lopez in the front office for dismissal. Jose Lopez to the front office for dismissal.
Individually to grab them back and then stress how important it is for them to pay attention to me. But when I give them something to look at and teach and talk at the same time, then I see the difference. So that's where I kind of want, our relationship to go, and trying to.
Yeah, I think that's great. I wouldn't have if management was a concern for me, we could have steered more that way. But management for me, only speaking, um, it's a different personality than what I normally am,
Mm-hmm.
and so I really have to change my switch and go into teacher mode, as my
Right.
friends sometimes call it, and get that a little bit sterner, because it's not an innate quality in me. In some teachers, it is.
Nor I, and I
Right.
think that's where my struggle comes.
And I think that you're on the right track with that. So I'm willing to go either way, but if you want to go for the questioning and the content delivery, I'm all for that as well. So the next thing that we need to decide, and this will be the conclusion of our conference, is how are we going to do that? What are some things that would be evidence of good content delivery as a teacher?
Well, can I go back a step?
Absolutely.
Okay. So, 15-year teacher or 14, 15-year teacher talking to me and seeing how I am in my classroom, and you're willing to go either way, but from observing me, like, what's your opinion on what you think
I think you need to focus on content delivery.
content delivery?
Absolutely. I'm not worried about your management at all. How many office referrals have you written this year?
None.
Exactly. Let's go ask the front office how many some other teachers have, and we're 6 weeks in, and that number's double digits for sure. Not
Yeah.
So you want my opinion? Content delivery.
Good.
But I want that to be our decision, not just mine.
Right.
Okay. So you're teaching a lesson, whether it's going to be an activity that's forthcoming that class period, or it's a full-on lecture. What are some things as a teacher that you are doing a good job based on your student responses in delivering the information? You can think about it in a minute.
I think I can relate it down to them. So I think I can do a pretty good job. And if somebody is like, yeah, I have no idea what you're talking about, I don't get it. So I'll zoom in on them and see who they are. So let's see what examples I can use, so that way it's feasible for them. They can visualize it, they can see it, they know what I'm understanding. If it's chemicals or whatever, I will try to break it down and even talk into the language that they're used to hearing. So I try to use simpler terms and see and let them know that they already know what this big word means. They've just been using, a synonym for it. That's a simpler word. So I think I'm pretty good at that. And so I can zero in on somebody and notice that they're not getting it. So let me change my vocabulary to where they would understand it, and then let them realize that you got this. You know what it is. You know the concepts.
So you feel that that's a strength of yours?
I think so.
Great. As a teacher, when students are understanding, what body language do you see from them?
I mean, they're alert. They're don't have their head down. They get it. They're excited. They're answering questions. They're more willing to participate.
Head nodding, that kind of
Right. You know, and so with this, which is it's so backwards with this age group, or I don't know. I've only ever taught eighth grade, so I don't know the difference. But it's just it's crazy how backwards they are because if something's hard and they don't understand it, they tune out. They put their head down, like I don't get this, and they just zone out. Which for me, if I didn't understand something, I'd be like, okay, what are they saying? What I don't get it. So I it paid more attention, but for some reason for them, you know, when I've lost the class, it's pretty evident.
Let me tell you where we're headed with this ending of our conversation. During my next observation, you're going to deliver a lesson of your choice. I have to take data from your lesson. And so what we're deciding now together is what type of data am I going to take. For example, you mentioned that you know you're doing a good job delivering the content when the students are alert. One piece of data I can take is how many students are inattentive during the lesson, for how long, how many minutes into the lesson. I plan on having a stopwatch, and we can do all of that. So I'd like other ways that we can collect data. I think for any type of lesson, student attentiveness, as a teacher, you know whether or not you're delivering the material in an understanding manner, right? Put yourself in the shoes of a student and all three learning types, auditory, visual, and tactile kinesthetic. What would be some things the teacher would do to deliver the lesson for you to understand? I'll give you an example. You mentioned writing on a smartboard.
Right.
That's very easy data for me to say. You went to the smartboard on this picture of whatever, or to explain this process. What are some other things?
I guess like modeling for those kinesthetic learners. If it's moon phases, then let's get the moon on a stick. Let's get the sun. Let's do that, or have something that they can be able to not only just see, but touch and move around and see how it works. So I guess incorporating those into the actual lesson.
Okay.
And then for audio, just, I don't know, I guess how I'm explaining something? I don't know.
Okay. So what we'll do is I'll take some data on the student's body language. And I'll take some data on your distribution of how you're delivering to all three learning styles. So, we'll tabulate how many times you used movement and modeling and demonstration, student volunteers or whatever to get that tactile in. We'll do the same for visual and auditory. Let's go to questioning, because that's also a part of lesson delivery. Let me ask you first, what is the purpose of questioning?
For assessment, to see if they've understood it or not.
Right. It's informal assessment.
Right.
Spot on.
Pardon the interruption. Mr. Carlos, can you please head to the 7th grade hallway? Mr. Carlos, to the 7th grade hallway, please.
You get immediate feedback on whether or not your students are understanding.
Right.
So we're going to do some data collection on questioning. What do you think would be good data to collect?
How many correct answers?
Absolutely. All right. So we're going to do right and wrong answers. I mentioned wait time, so I'd like to build in, stopwatch, and I want you to build in some wait time.
So when we're talking about wait time, though, tell me an example that you saw where I lacked in wait time because I'm not understanding exactly what it is you're saying.
We'll pretend this is the Earth, right? And here's the light bulb, right? All right, so the North Pole Is it tilted? It's tilted towards the sun. So what season is it, Johnny? It's immediate.
Oh, okay.
And so in the South Pole, Susie, what would it be?
Okay.
That's how it is. And
Okay.
so we need to add some time, seconds, not minutes, just for the kids to go, okay, she just picked on me. Oh my gosh.
Right.
A strategy that I've used in the past is ask the question first. Everybody in the class is fair game for you to ask.
Right.
They should all have the answer. And then give them that 10, 15, if it's a harder level question, more time, and then call on that person.
Okay, I see what you're saying.
So that's what we mean by wait time.
Okay.
So I'll take some notes on that. I was going somewhere else with that too. Anything else on the questioning as a teacher that you... Oh, that's where I was going. Higher level, lower level questions.
Okay.
Bloom's taxonomy.
Right.
Okay, we want to be asking those basic understanding, because we can't have higher level thinking without basic understanding.
Right.
But we need to distribute those questions and make sure we're not just asking the lower level. So I'll do some tabulations of low versus high order thinking. Any other thoughts on anything, not just questions?
During interactive lessons, and I know that you said that I was, table to table, but how many times do you stop the class and ask the question at hand? Because I don't feel like I do that a whole lot, but mainly because I feel like the students are kind of understanding it at their lab stations, but when I see the same mistake is being done over and over again, I'll stop the class, all, eyes on me. Okay, this is, make sure we're doing this correct as a class, but would it benefit the class more if I'm, firing questions off while they're at the lab stations, or is that something that...
When we're doing cooperative group learning, I try to anticipate the questions students are going to have before they head out there, and try to do a little bit of either explanation or questioning beforehand, especially on the ones that they are consistently, all groups are not doing correctly. During the activity, I very rarely stop the whole class and say, all right guys, let's pay attention. Because the fact of the matter is most of them probably aren't. And some of the students don't need that. They're already on track. That's when I like to handle it by group. And so I have this whole thing where I answer student questions with questions. They'll ask me a question, and so I'll ask questions for them to eventually give themselves the own answer. So that's how I do it. I'll go to one group at a time, and if they don't have any questions, I'll just start asking questions to make sure that everybody is understanding. So if you choose to do a group learning experience, that is data that I can take as well. Is how many times did you ask questions? Did you ask questions to every student? So that's absolutely a possibility as well. Does that answer your question? Okay. Anything else? Okay, so just to kind of recap, we went over our observations of one another, and although management was a concern, I brought up the observation of content delivery, especially in formal questioning, so that's where we're going to focus. I'm going to take some data on student body language and attentiveness during the class period. Your delivery in the use of all three learning styles, and then your use of questioning, specifically students getting right and wrong answers, the wait time that you use, and the higher order thinking questions. So there's a couple things that I need from you before we continue on. Number one, I need you to pick a lesson. I've seen a cooperative learning opportunity. If you would like me to see that again, that works for me. If you'd like me to see a more lecture type, we can do that also. Because questioning and content delivery and all that happens in both experiences. So look down in the next week of your calendar and what you would like me to observe, and I'll make myself available. And then have some questions pre-written out before I observe you. That way you're giving yourself a script just in case something throws you off, and you want some basic core questions that by the end of the lesson, these are the things the students need to know. So have some pre-written questions ready to go. Also, that just kind of helps you focus your questioning. Are these all low level? Are they high level? And it just kind of helps more effective lessons. Those would be the two things I think. All right. Well, I look forward to hearing from you again. And I'll be observing you soon.
All right. Sounds good.
Thanks, Michelle.